against itself cannot stand. And so we know that it's really important for us to keep building up the economy.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, I bet it is. All right. We have another day of the theatrics here continuing in Parliament. We should be live, should be good to go. Let me just double check here. Yes, King Charles to deliver the throne speech. This guy appeared in Canada yesterday and is getting a big ceremony, a big parade, a big all this, that, and the fourth. Time and time again, Canadians sit here and go, our sovereignty is under attack. We are a sovereign nation as Canada. We will protect it by any means. But hey, King Charles, ruler of Canada, why don't you come here and deliver a throne speech on behalf of all of Canada? Right. Yes, right. Anyway, I hope everybody is having a fantastic day. The morning, slowly but surely trucking along as we head closer and closer to noon. King Charles arrived yesterday, met with Mark Carney, looked like they were best friends. They probably are. Little sip of water here. Yeah, we got a whole
Wellington Street.
Thing going on
here.
here.
That procession move here, and we saw the band come through first. Really feel the weight of the moment. I also, referenced the crowd on the other side behind the camera from me, and you can just see people getting excited, waiting with anticipation because they know that.
Oh yeah, very so excited. I can barely stay seated. That's how excited I am. My goodness. Like, they constantly talk about how we are living in uncertain times. And here we are, just dragging things out day after day. Parliament, air quotations, has begun again. Things have started back up again. But have they really? This is what we're doing right now. This is what Parliament is doing. The chambers are awaiting King Charles in this massive celebration.
So much color, so much sound, and it feels like almost all of a sudden things have gone quite still, except for the voices that we're hearing now.
Yeah, there's so much tradition steeped into every bit of what we are about to watch, including what we just had eyes on with the sort of preparation of the honor guard. Even when the king gets to the Senate, the inspection of the honor guard is something that is, the presentation of it is very much aimed only at a royal audience in this instance. So it will be very specific and very steeped in tradition as well. Then, as you talked about, the 21 gun salute, and even as the king makes his way alongside Queen Camilla into the Senate, there are a very specific roster of people who will accompany them into the chamber where ultimately the throne speech will be delivered.
And you can see the other Canadian flags, the Union Jacks, side by side. And just for some, perspective and to situate us, this is a shot of Wellington Street, and the building behind this crowd is the Chateau Laurier, which is really a fixture of this city. Opposite that is the Senate, and we know in 2019, the Senate chamber moved to the old Ottawa train station because Centre Block, which is where the Peace Tower is undergoing extensive renovations, and the House of Commons is in West Block. So what would you say, about a 10-minute walk from Centre Block to the old train station?
Yeah, this is why nobody takes our country seriously. We allow a leader from another country to come and essentially just take over for a few days. All the attention on King Charles here. Who, by the way, the Governor General acts on behalf of King Charles III, and whatever policies or things he was supposed to do, she acts on behalf of him, which then the Senate answers to the Governor General, and the House of Commons essentially answers to the Senate. So, once again, I would love to know how we are a sovereign nation. Somebody, please explain this to me. Because it really doesn't feel like it, does it? We have a monarch, an entire celebration here for a king that doesn't even reside in our country. And we celebrate this. We're supposed to celebrate it, I guess. I mean, look at this presentation they're giving us here right now. What an absolute joke. Mark Carney goes on vacation in Rome. Then they hold this G7 summit meeting where leaders from all around the world, they get to go on a nice vacation in the mountains. And now we're doing this. An entire week. Parliament just returned. An entire week is being dedicated to whatever the hell we have going on here. And no, I'm not really excited by any means. I could care less about King Charles coming to Canada. Looks like we have a bunch of Mark Carney voters here, excited to see our EU friends showing up. My goodness. These are the same people that want Canada to be independent, but then will line up to see King Charles show up. Like, come on now.
So there's such other interesting tidbits of history, and you've written so extensively about this on ctvnews.ca in a fascinating article about previous royal visits. I mean, talk to us a little bit about what will be unfolding in the next few minutes when their majesties arrive to the Senate and the ceremony gets underway with the usher of the Black Rod.
Well, you know, of course, because our parliament's kind of separated now between the West Block and the old railway station, things are a little different than they would normally be when they're all in center block. But it's interesting, this visit's been organized so that landau is going to go right down Wellington in front of the Parliament building. So you're going to get that great shot of the King and the Queen, the RCMP musical ride in a landau going down Wellington with the Peace Tower in the backdrop. So it's a pretty amazing moment of Canadian iconic places. Then they come to the Senate, where there will obviously be this Guard of Honor, which is drawn from the Royal Canadian Regiment. Now, it's interesting, the Royal Canadian Regiment was the Colonel-in-Chief of that regiment was the King's father, the Duke of Edinburgh. His last visit to Canada was to present colors to that regiment at Queen's Park. He was not, you know, entirely in good form, but he still came, another very short visit where he managed to do that. So that regiment has a very direct relationship.
Okay, so it looks like the government's priorities will be outlined today during the throne speech. So King Charles is going to be giving us the priorities of our government today, opposed to Mark Carney. Good Christ.
Of the House of Commons being called to the Senate because they have to take a bus down the street, you're going to see Indigenous symbolism and Indigenous ceremony take place in the Senate chamber. This is a complete innovation, and again, I think it speaks to our Canadian tradition and our Canadian evolving tradition.
All right, Richard, I'll leave it there. We're going to keep checking in with you. You're very kind to lend us so much of your time this morning and your insights. I appreciate it. That's Richard Berthelsen. We will keep checking in because what you are witnessing, what you look at on the screen there, is just the beginning of the ceremony, the procession that is about to get underway. We are anticipating that the King and Queen will make their way not too long from now in a horse-drawn carriage from the Bank of Canada, a couple of blocks over to where you see those members of the RCMP standing, which is right in front of the Senate, where the Senate is housed, kind of in an old train station right here in downtown Ottawa. That throne speech will be anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes in length. We've got a lot to talk about as far as what might be in it or what might not be in it. That's what we're going to do after a short commercial break. Our special coverage of the throne speech opening the 45th session of Parliament continues in just a moment.
All right, there you have it, guys. Super exciting news. If you couldn't tell by the enthusiasm in my voice, I am so excited for King Charles. Woohoo. We have an interesting segment here from the CTV going over Alberta's separation, the referendum that is going to be pushed out here potentially whenever this by-election, it's really whenever this by-election is set to happen. I've heard by the end of the summer, the by-election could happen, which would allow Pierre to get his seat and would also allow Alberta to put this referendum to use if they really want to. Enough people vote for it. We have Andrew Scheer, We skip ahead a bit here to the actual thing. We have Andrew Scheer here going over it. I can only imagine Danielle Smith, canceling the industrial carbon tax, wanting the best things, the best interests for Alberta and Albertans, would continue this energy forward when the referendum gets put to question, when the ballots get put to question. For literally a decade now, the Liberal government has stomped all over Alberta and its main way of living, the backbone of that province. Natural resources, petroleum, gas. And Albertans are fed up. Quite frankly, are tired of being pushed around by a majority of the country. Albertans feel like they have no say in the election. And I don't blame them for wanting to leave. I mean, how could you blame Albertans when their main bread and butter, the thing that runs their province, is being attacked? I don't blame them for a second.
I appreciate you making the time. I've asked the same question of your counterpart in government, but I wanted to ask you as well. How can Canadians expect your party to approach this session that is different from the last one?
Well, a lot of that will depend on what the government brings forward. Parliament is about to start. We don't yet have a clear idea of what their priorities are going to be. There's some really easy stuff, though, that they can do that would get the approval of the House of Commons. That would be to undo the terrible Liberal policies from the previous Parliament. So if the government wants some easy ideas, some low-hanging fruit to improve the lives of Canadians, they could start with, for example, repealing Liberal Bill C-75 and C-5. Those are two pieces of legislation that the Liberals brought in that caused the explosion of crime in our communities with their easy bail instead of jail policies. They could fully and completely eliminate the carbon tax for everyone on everything, including the industrial side as well, so that our Canadian manufacturers are not playing shorthanded against their American competitors. They could repeal Bill C-69, that's the No More Pipelines law, which led to a complete desertion of our energy sector by investors and massive attack on jobs throughout Canada, including Western Canada. So those are some really easy things they could do that they could bring forward to the House that we not only would we support, we've been calling for it.
Yeah, I mean, look, you can call for it as much as you want, and I think these are all fantastic things that need to be passed. We're dealing with the exact same Liberal part. Like, the whole idea that they've changed, that the Liberals have changed, is ridiculous. The exact same cabinet for the most part. The exact same caucus. Across the board here, I don't think much will change. And we already saw Mark Carney dismissing Melanie Joly the first day back in the House of Commons, waving her, shooing her away. Already tired of listening to these people. That's what it seems like, anyway. I don't expect much to literally change at all. We are dealing with the exact same Liberal government, the exact same incompetent ministers over the past 10 years that have failed Canadians. They're back. Melanie Joly, Chrystia Freeland, Dominic LeBlanc, Champagne. What's his name? Francois Champagne. Like all of these guys and girls. They're women. They're all the same. They're all the exact same. And Mark Carney, he's just an extension of Trudeau. That's all he is. He helped Trudeau from 2020 to 2024, and look what happened. Look what has happened to the economy. Trudeau asked Carney for advice to help boost the economy after COVID. And look what has happened. The deficit, for example. They blew past it. They blew past it. $21.8 billion over the line that they set. Desjardins the other day came out with a prediction for the deficit. And based on the fall economic statement the government gave last year, it looks like they're going to blow way past it again. Only further bankrupting Canada. we have this CTV panel here. Obviously, the King Charles thing and the big talk of the day. The symbolic and political significance of the throne speech. Yeah, okay.
That they were prior to the election. At the same time, like, there's a reason the king is here, and a lot of it has to do with our sovereignty.
I think that's true, and I think it's also important for the monarchy itself. I think the king was not viewed very positively by a lot of royal watchers and supporters in Canada by being so subtle and silent when the rhetoric was much more heated coming from Donald Trump, and then in the midst of that, extending an invitation through the Prime Minister of Great Britain to or the UK to the President of the United States, which really made it I think very uncomfortable for a lot of Canadians, a lot of people who support the royal family. So I think there's a little bit of damage control here for the king and the royal family, and I think that pushes them towards maybe being a little bit bolder in what's said. I think there's a confluence of interest for both the Carney government and Canadians generally, but I think also for the royal family. To say, yes, while we have, historic friendship with the United States and fought side by side in many wars and other things, but we are a sovereign nation and we have a different set of traditions and institutions. This is not a republic, it's a commonwealth. Under the British Westminster parliamentary system, there's a proud tradition on which, other democracies have followed. But it's our own, and it's unique, and it's Canadian. And
is it unique though when our system is literally built on the monarchy, based on a parliamentary system from a different country? Sure, you could say we're independent and sovereign, right? Whatever. We're no longer under the crown officially, but when we do stuff like this, I mean, come on. Come on, when you look how the parliamentary system is laid out, it's really hard to believe that we are truly sovereign. Are we really buying this? Because I'm not. I'm not buying it for a second.
Some of how Carney's government now kind of tries to explain to Canadians what their political thesis is on what Canada is and what Canada is going to be in the future. I mean, it's hard not to get caught up in all of the political theater and stagecraft. It's really a regal return to Parliament, a Parliament that really hasn't been sitting for over 5 months now since Parliament rose in December.
And the first thing they decide to do when Parliament returns is bring the king over and have a big old celebration.
And prorogation of Parliament. So it's, I'm watching to see, really how this government puts forth its ideas. And it's a difficult time, not only because of the things you've discussed in terms of the threat from the U.S., the tariffs, and the very threat to our sovereignty, but also just the economic headwinds that Canada is facing, right? Not only, are we facing increasing unemployment, but the threats of a possible recession. And I think that's why you've seen the government try to take a beat, take some time before they introduce and table a budget. They need that time to really kind of get a sense of where the economy is going and what this government's going to do to kind of increase productivity and hopefully keep our economy on the right track despite all of the threats that are coming at it.
Kathleen Montgomery tonight and Scott Reid, will be checking in with them throughout the morning. They're going to be with us. Omar, some pushback, though, even on that decision to wait until the fall, that, I guess, eventual decision to wait until the fall for the budget. But there is, as all three laid out, a lot to watch for from both a symbolic and substantive perspective on this throne speech.
Yeah, that fall economic statement now turning into a full budget in a few months. CTV's senior political correspondent Michael Couture is inside the Senate where VIPs are still gathering. And just by way of a quick time check, Mike, we know that state landau was supposed to leave the Bank of Canada at about 10 o'clock, and the throne speech was supposed to start at 11. Lasting about 20-25 minutes. We're hearing, though, that things are running about 15 minutes behind schedule. Give us a sense of what it's like where you are right now.
Oh, great. So not only are they dragging things out, they're also behind schedule. Fantastic.
And obviously, as you said, there is a bit of a delay, but we do have a number of people that are hanging around, the staffers or people who work in the Senate that are waiting with bated breath. There's a bit of a balcony, that is just above us where people are looking down onto the red carpet, waiting to see when the royals will finally come through. We also saw former Premier of Alberta, Jason Kenney, here, so he is in attendance as well, and a number of ministers already in the building. François Philippe Champagne, the finance minister, who of course will have to deliver that budget coming up in the fall, talking about the ambition and what we're expecting.
And they should have already had a budget ready to go. We're looking at a government that wasn't even prepared to be in the position it's in. I mean, my goodness. Finance minister during the G7 summit meeting just stumbled around his own words. Let's listen to this fool.
The message from the King will reaffirm that, Canada, which is not only strong at home, but strong around the world, wants to play leadership. We already host the G7. I think it's our moment as a nation to shine and to attract attention from around the world.
And that attention is coming from around the world right now, Omar, and of course they will be watching this speech, and Vashi, looking to see what the contents are. And again, going back to what we're expecting from there, talking about not only the middle-class tax cut that they're expecting to introduce, but also taking away all those interprovincial trade barriers, something that I was speaking with just a little earlier with Premier Wab Kinew of Manitoba, how important that is to really build up Canada's economy. That is the focus of François Philippe Champagne as finance minister as well, making sure that we are that economic powerhouse that can withstand any type of trade war with the United States, while at the same time diversifying our trade. That we'll expect will be another type of theme, or at least mentioned in this throne speech. This is something that Prime Minister Mark Carney has been speaking about for the last few weeks, and making sure that we continue to build up alliances that are beyond the border with the United States, ensure that we are diversifying those trade partners. Guys?
All right, thanks so much, Mike. That's Michael Couture inside the Senate. The VIPs, the guests for the throne speech, are all arriving as we speak. Omar mentioned we're a little bit behind as far as the schedule when the King and the Queen will leave the Bank of Canada and head over to that building where Mike is inside, where the Senate is housed. Our royal commentator, Effia Hagen, is watching along with us from London. Effia, it's great to see you. I wanted to ask you a little bit about kind of the situation the King finds himself in, right? He has been fighting cancer. He is getting treatment, and yet here to deliver today's throne speech. What's the context in the UK for this?
Absolutely. I think, Bashi, this really speaks to how important this is to King Charles III. As you so rightly said, last year was really all about him and that cancer diagnosis. For the first 6 months of the year, he wasn't out and about doing the thing he loved the most, which is connecting with the people, being amongst the people. He much prefers connection over formality. And now we are seeing him still continuing with this cancer treatment. And let's remember, about a month, 6 weeks ago, he had an event where he did have that cancer treatment and had to be admitted to hospital for a short period before he was allowed home, had to have a short period of rest, but then was back to work. So that reminds us that this is a 76-year-old monarch who is living with cancer. And that is the context of where we are. But that also shows you how important this is to him, and not just about him supporting Canada, reasserting his place as the sovereign and the monarch, but it's also about
reasserting his place, huh? Yeah, all right. Sovereign Canada, by the way, guys. The King is coming over to assert himself. Holy Christ.
Forwarding this project or that project. It was about King Charles having cancer, and that's not the headline that he wanted for the first year.
Is he gonna show up and announce we're officially a part of the EU now? I see more UK Britain flags in this audience than I do Canadian. My goodness. My goodness, our country for the past 3 months has been screaming about how we're independent and want to remain sovereign and buy only Canada this, that. And here they are, bowing down as soon as as soon as the monarch shows up. This is ridiculous.
playing that part of the diplomat in chief. It makes us think about the importance of the monarchy and the royal family, not just here in the UK, but across the Commonwealth. That's what we are seeing playing out here in the United Kingdom. And I think also there is a real feeling that we are glad to see our king out doing the business that he loves most, flexing that power of soft diplomacy, really, really flexing that muscle at a time where it really needs to be flexed.
I
Just
mean,
very quickly,
at this point, why doesn't she just say, oh, he's showing up so he can reclaim Canada? Because that's pretty much all I got from that. He's showing up to say, hey guys, remember me? Yeah, you're actually part of the Commonwealth, by the way. I own you. That's all I'm getting from this.
The strength of the Commonwealth, I think we can expect to hear those themes. He will remain as apolitical as he can afford to in this time.
Right.
okay, thanks so much. That's Afia Hagen. Interesting point that Buckingham Palace is already conveying what we won't hear in the throne speech.
Exactly. Afia, you know, I just want to ask a quick question before we leave you. You know, you've been sort of my royal partner for a couple of years now. How much news is this making in the UK? You talked about the fact that the Brits are largely happy to see the King and Queen exerting this level of soft diplomacy. Is it big news across the pond?
Definitely. Yesterday, you know, we had probably pretty much all the news channels rolling with the coverage of the King and Queen arriving, of the reception, and then at the farmers market. Unfortunately, we had a really horrible incident yesterday that occurred in Liverpool just after the football team had a huge parade there, and that sort of has overtaken the news cycle. But before that happened, definitely lots of channels rolling with it. It was on the covers of lots of the papers yesterday, but like I said, unfortunately, because of that news incident, I think that this story has certainly slipped down the news cycle. But before that happened, definitely it was widely being covered and widely being talked about. Today it is, you know, coming back up the news cycle a little bit, but I think had that not happened, it probably would be definitely our top story.
All right, Afia Hagen, thank you. Appreciate your time. And you know, when the throne speech gets underway, Vashi, for the first time, a reigning monarch will be using that particular throne. We're looking at a live shot right now of the Prime Minister's motorcade arriving at the Senate chamber, where, as we mentioned, the throne speech was supposed to get underway in about an hour's time, 11 o'clock. Things seem to be running a little bit late, about 15 minutes is what you were hearing, Vashi. And the Prime Minister now just about to emerge from that vehicle. There he is, Mark Carney, entering the Senate chamber, where there is a crowd of VIPs gathering. Obviously, a lot of cheers. Let's just take a moment to listen in.
Oh, he looks very happy to be there. No smile at all from Carney. Very serious moment in a very serious time. Well, I'm glad he's parading around Ottawa with the king. That was sarcasm, by the way. my God. The Carney Simps are out in full force today, ladies and gentlemen.
Who I believe is wearing his Order of Canada medal. I think the king is going to be wearing his as well. A beautiful rendition of O Canada. The crowd definitely very much getting into the spirit of things. Feels a little bit like Canada Day here in Ottawa. That's the Prime Minister.
I thought of the exact same thing, actually.
Yeah.
It does feel like July 1st.
Yeah.
Oh, it feels a bit like Canada Day. Good thing we're bringing over the king, right? Yeah. Oh, good old jolly day here in Canada.
The 3rd Battalion of the Royal Canadian Regiment, an inspection of the guard and the band, followed by a 21-gun salute. And the fact that the Prime Minister is now entering the chamber gives you a sense that things are imminent, but I use that term imminent loosely because the throne speech was supposed to get underway at about 11 o'clock. The state landau was supposed to leave the Bank of Canada around this time, but we're hearing things are about 10 or 15 minutes delayed.
And the Usher of the Black Rod now making his way. This is the chief liaison, essentially, between the monarchy and the government. His name is Greg Peters, and it's a very symbolic role. It's actually really symbolic even if the king weren't here. At the start of any parliamentary session, there's a process whereby the Usher of the Black Rod goes and gets all the members of Parliament, and then also kind of gets things started in the Senate with the Speaker of the Senate. It is a very crucial role to Parliament writ large, but it is particularly crucial when the monarch is present, as is the case today.
And the role of the Black Rod actually goes back 600 years. I mean, this goes way back in the constitutional system, and it is quite a tradition. I mean, the Black Rod, the Usher of the Black Rod, takes the Black Rod and then knocks on the doors of the Commons 3 times. And basically, when the Governor General is sitting, says that the Governor General desires to see you. Given that the King is in town today, he'll say that the King commands to see you. Those MPs will...
I bet the King does command to see him. Here we go. Theatrics on full display, as I've said. And as is in the title here, let the theatrics begin. That's pretty much all this is. They're taking their sweet time. Apparently they're running 15-20 minutes behind. I'm so glad they are wasting the first week of Parliament to do this. You know, opposed to passing bills, writing policy, question period, debating one another, asking questions. Oh, no, I'm so glad we're sitting here watching the RCMP trot down the middle of Ottawa as King Charles is supposedly in one of these vehicles in this oh, this is fantastic, guys. And you know what, man? They're not even gonna cancel the summer recess. They're gonna enjoy this week of nothing, head into 3 weeks of nothing, and then go on a break. After nearly 6 months of doing nothing. The prorogation of Parliament, the random snap election. They haven't done their jobs in nearly 6 months. And the first week back, it's this. My goodness.
I'm out here more than nearly 2 hours before this procession even started.
Well, we tried to see the King yesterday at Lansdowne, and the crowds were big, and so we didn't succeed, but it was a beautiful day. So today we went out for a walk, and we decided why not try to get a good place to see the King. I think it's important, so we wanted to be here.
You were saying earlier that you didn't consider yourself a monarchist, but something about this moment has stirred these feelings of patriotism in you. What about it has stirred these emotions?
Well, I think we are at a moment where sometimes our history and our democracy are taken for granted a little bit, and so I think this is a good reminder of how important it is that we have a head of state, that we respect him, and that if he comes all the way here to deliver our speech from the throne, that's historical on its own. So I think it's exciting, and I wanted to be a part of history, and I think it's helpful to get the people mobilized as well and to appreciate our country again. again and remind ourselves of how wonderful a place it is. So.
Wayne, let me ask you a couple of questions. You know, this pomp and ceremony is for the people. Are you feeling patriotic?
I feel patriotic, and it's a long history.
Oh, they're coming. Wait. Okay, here it goes. All right. All right. That was a moment in which these people will always.
Oh yeah, that was a moment if a moment could moment, ladies and gentlemen. You know what? If people want to be excited and happy about this, sure, whatever. I don't really care. I don't really get it. I would much rather our politicians be working right now opposed to whatever this is. King Charles and the Queen making their way to the Senate building to deliver the throne speech. And within the throne speech, apparently will be the government's future policies and their plan, or at least some of it. I don't know. I don't know, but it's not going to be coming from the mouth of Mark Carney himself. It's going to be coming from King Charles.
That's Canada apart from the U.S. The most distinct, perhaps most obvious, is the fact that we are a constitutional monarchy, but also it has to do with our Indigenous relations, this country's history with the First Nations, with the Métis and with the Inuit, as well as our acknowledgement of Quebec. And this is a moment in which those three pillars of Canadian sovereignty come together in history. Vashi and Omar.
It's also a moment, Omar, where it's actually happening. They're not delayed. We were told they were 15 minutes delayed. They've left. They've made up some great time. They're making their way along the route from the Bank of Canada to the Senate, where the King will deliver the speech. There they are. This is our first glimpse now of the King and Queen. Let's listen in as they make their way through the crowd. And there's the scene outside the Senate, that is the building that houses the Senate, where King Charles and Queen Camilla are now making their way in that very historic landau along the route along Wellington Street to that building. Our Abigail Beeman is also in the middle of all that action. Abigail, I'll throw things over to you.
Hi, well, as you mentioned, the King and Queen just pulled up in that landau behind me. Also in that carriage is the Governor General and her party. The crowd here is a funny mix of getting extremely exciting and then going silent, just wanting to take everything in. You can hear them now cheering behind me. Moments before the Mounties on horses arrived, the Prime Minister arrived. That was an exciting moment for the crowd here. The Prime Minister was standing on the dais there as O Canada was played. He had sort of a... We're just going to listen into the crowd here.
I thought they were just playing explosion sounds on a loudspeaker. What could he possibly be talking to, or asking, or whatever, to that soldier? What is going on here? This is so strange to me. As a Canadian, watching other Canadians get excited and cheer on somebody who he's ruler of a completely different country. I supposedly, right? If Canada is independent and this sovereign nation, I don't believe it for a second. But if we are, I just find this very weird. It would be like the president of Brazil or somebody of that nature coming here and we're all just cheering them on. Like, I guess, yes, the monarch and the British Empire has way more historical play in Canada than anywhere else, obviously. But this is just so weird to me.
Regiment, you could see King Charles on a couple of instances there stop for a moment to speak to the members of the Guard of Honor that he was, the term is formally inspecting. And now he will make his way eventually, after the full inspection is complete, into the Senate, which is where he'll deliver the speech.
And His Majesty, of course, wearing a customary medal array and an Order of Canada around his neck as he continues to
meet with some members of the band, trying to make out if we can hear what he's saying, but it's hard.
And so many times with these royal visits, they actually cut the boom mic, so you can't hear what the royals are saying. But I'm also trying to listen to see what.
In fact, I was pretty much.
The last one we did was 2021.
That's also good. It's just a good
I think I hear people in the crowd chanting "God Save the King," if I'm not mistaken.
I think you're right, yeah. Quite a sizable crowd has definitely gathered through the course of the morning, watching the King make his way into the building that houses the Red Chamber. And here he goes to sort of present himself to the crowd.
My God, it seems like there's a lot of Canadians that would just accept being a part of the EU. Canadians, when Donald Trump says, join the United States, be the 51st state, up in arms, ready to go to war. When the King shows up, long live the King! Everybody praise this man. What the hell?
King Charles, Queen Camilla. I think it's the Governor General and her husband, Whit Fraser, just
right.
behind him, making their way inside now, greeted by another rousing rendition of O Canada as the King stood to kind of present himself to the crowd, adorned like the Prime Minister in the Medal of the Order of Canada around his neck.
He has now made his way through the doors of the Senate chamber. And we're just trying to make out who he's greeting and shaking hands with right now. CTV's Abigail Beeman is across the street. This is the Chief of the Defense Staff coming up here, Jenny Carignan. CTV's Abigail Beeman is standing by. Just walk us through that moment in history, Abigail, that we just all saw and witnessed together.
That was a really good way to put it, a moment in history. And I think I'll reference again how the crowd reacted. How the crowd reacted when both the Prime Minister and the King arrived. So we saw the King and Queen, as well as the Governor General and her spouse, arrive in that open carriage and get out. There were two O Canadas played first when the Prime Minister arrived. I'm not sure if you want to listen again. Yeah, I'll throw it back to you, Vashi and Omar.
Yeah, well, we're going to thanks, Abigail. We'll take a listen in because the River Dance drummers are about to perform inside the foyer of the Senate for King Charles.
Mark Carney looks very confused. And while that's going on, I just want to thank everybody who is joining right now. Make sure you hit that like button if you haven't already. Hit the sub button if you're new. This is quite the little demonstration here. Not just the drum circle, but I mean everything in its entirety. This whole thing, from the shooting off of artillery rounds, fake artillery rounds, to the RCMP trotting down. Like, this is just... I don't know. Like, are our tax dollars going towards this? How much money is going towards this to host this extremely drawn out presentation? I guess this is supposed to be a big historical moment for Canada. I don't, once again, understand it. If you want to be excited for King Charles showing up, then by all means, be excited, but I don't understand it at all. I would just love to know how we are a sovereign nation, because the more and more you really look into it, the more and more you look at some of these paintings on the wall here, the way our system is laid out, I don't think so. I don't know. I don't buy it. I really don't. I just, yeah, I don't know. This is nonsense, really. Yeah, this whole thing. I truly am curious how much money goes behind this to host. How many millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer money is being funneled into this right now.
Enjoy your visit. Hey, you're welcome. Thanks for coming. Hey. Thank you very much. Hey, how you doing? Good to see you.
King, the Queen, the Prime Minister, the Governor General, all thanking the river dance drummers for their performance. You can see the gallery even in the foyer lined with people, with onlookers who are hoping to catch a glimpse of the King and the Queen. They will now kind of disappear in a few moments from public view, and when they re-emerge, they will be back inside the Senate, where ultimately the King is set to deliver the speech from the throne. It's probably a good place to point out that there are a number of Indigenous leaders that the King met with yesterday, many of whom have conveyed to us they are hoping that there is significant reference in this throne speech to the treaty relationship between Crown and Indigenous people, the Crown rather, and Indigenous people in this country. I do expect there will be some of that in the speech, but it's also a key part of what you have seen so far in the ceremony that's leading up to the speech. Lots of Indigenous participation through, for example, what we just witnessed with the river dance drummers. There will be more after the ceremony as well. And then, of course, the Governor General herself, the first Indigenous person to hold the title of Governor General in our history.
And acknowledging that colonial legacy, a part of this country's journey of reconciliation. We were wondering who some of those members of the entrance party were, Vashi, when the royal couple arrived inside the Senate together with the Governor General and her husband, Whit Fraser. And we know that the Speaker of the Senate was there, the spouse of the Speaker of the Senate, the Chief of the Defense Staff, as we mentioned, Jenny Carignan, and the Commissioner of the RCMP, Commissioner Michael Duet. Let's get to CTV's royal commentator, Afia Hagan, who joins us now from London. And as we get ready for this throne speech to get underway, Afia, in about a half an hour's time, you mentioned the last time we chatted about this concept of soft diplomacy, the fact that the king and his role is not an inherently political role, it's an apolitical role. But we have seen examples from him, as we're seeing now, and also with the Queen, of them exerting their power and their influence in certain cases historically. Can you talk a little bit about that and the significance of that part of their role?
Yes, absolutely. You know, the king is supposed to, or the monarch rather, is supposed to remain apolitical at all times. Queen Elizabeth II, you know, managed to do that pretty much through her time as the monarch. But when it came to apartheid, particularly, something that she felt that she had to sort of exert the power of soft diplomacy, and that, you know, when it came to places that she would visit, when it came to people that she would speak to, you know, it was all about subtly as you can, you know, place her support for the South African Indigenous people against apartheid at that time, whilst also not really saying anything at all. It's a very difficult sort of tightrope that you have to toe, where you are the head of state, where you are supposed to.
That's a good one, Skidmark. I'm gonna have to steal that from you. I'm just saying that actually got a good laugh out of me.
Opponent of apartheid in South Africa. You know, it was something that she felt she had to do. She refused to visit the country at the time of racial segregation. She just said that she wasn't going to go there. And that was her way of flexing that power of soft diplomacy, of letting that play out. This is something that we are seeing similarly here with King Charles III. It's not necessarily not visiting a country, but for him, you know, as a sovereign, and as the monarch of Canada and of the United Kingdom, those are the countries that he has to have their back, essentially, for want of putting it a better way, in the face of an aggressor, whoever that aggressor may be. We've also seen him on the world stage with President Zelensky. You know, he's shown his support for Ukraine over the duration of the war the past 3 years, whether that's, you know, wearing a yellow tie or having a Ukrainian flag or having colors of flowers in the colors of the Ukrainian flag at events he's been at. You know, it's these kind of subtle ways that he has shown his political leanings, perhaps where he stands on things, and flexing that power of soft diplomacy. But you've got to think to yourself, it comes to a point where your head of state, your monarch, can't afford to stay out of the fray. And I think that's where we are now, is that King Charles III knows that as the head of state of Canada, he has to perhaps show us his political leanings, show us that he has Canada's back. He has.
Oh, so he's not going to remain apolitical. Interesting. Interesting how that works. I mean, it just further contradicting themselves. Come on now.
And let the geopolitical situation play out in the way that it is. He has to get involved. He has to be in the fray, and that's what we're seeing here.
So,
he has to, huh? He doesn't have any other option? I see. Okay.
Is there any opportunity for King Charles to be the so-called Trump whisperer? I mean, it appears publicly that Donald Trump is somebody who respects the king.
Donald Trump is someone who loves the idea of the British royal family. He's a huge fan of Queen Elizabeth II. He's a huge fan of King Charles III. Remember, Melania Trump and King Charles III are pen pals. Love to know what they've been chatting about recently. But absolutely, King Charles III and Prince William both are the Trump whisperers. They absolutely have his ear. And he is, someone that they can influence. Donald Trump absolutely respects the king, respects Prince William. And so we'll listen to what they have to say. The Trump administration, along with Donald Trump himself, will be watching what's happening today very, very closely. I'm sure they're watching our coverage.
Yeah, they're probably watching and making fun of us right now. Because opposed to getting things done, we're having a giant parade and celebration.
Can be the ones to sort of talk him down, to offer him something else. We've heard whispers of perhaps the United States being an associate member of the Commonwealth, and Donald Trump, loved that idea. He, on his Truth Social, his platform said, that sounds good to me. So maybe that's something that can be leveled in exchange for the Americans backing down on this ludicrous idea of Canada being the 51st state. Let's not forget we have that second state visit coming up as well. Unprecedented. Many presidents have ever had a second state visit. And that state visit's not just going to be about Buckingham Palace and pomp and pageantry. It's about Balmoral. Balmoral's the inner circle. For Donald Trump to feel like he's in the inner circle with King Charles III, that's worth more than its weight in gold.
All right, now we're finally in the Senate building. Looks like it's starting to fill up here. Why do they look like they're dressed as Santa Claus there in the middle? I don't know. That's beyond me. This is not, I'm just going to be real here. This is the first time I've ever watched a throne speech, this parade style thing. I typically, keep up with the House of Commons and a little bit of the Senate here and there, but this specifically is all new to me. There's the ceremonial mace that is carried around everywhere, from the House of Commons to the Senate. Literally has the Queen's crown on it.
From a forest just behind Windsor Castle. That's a piece of wood that the British royal family donated to Canada. And so there is that part of the links to the monarchy that are reflected in the two thrones that you're seeing there right now.
Can also see, this is our first glimpse inside the room of who has actually assembled, because we know beyond senators, and we can see a number of them in their seats, there are a variety of dignitaries. So on the left hand of your screen, I can see kind of out of the corner of my eye, former governors general. I saw both David Johnston, Governor General David Johnston, as well as Governor General Adrienne Clarkson. Behind them, a number of Indigenous leaders. I believe I saw Nat Obed among them. I know there are former prime ministers here, for example, Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau. Been a long time since they—
Oh no, Trudeau is here. Where is he? Show him.
I think I just saw that on the right-hand screen before the camera panned up. So we'll keep our eye on who else we can see assembled. But this also reflects like the uniqueness of the moment. I can't remember the last time a variety of governors general, but also former prime ministers were together to witness the delivery of the throne
And I
speech.
think just opposite the thrones, we saw the justices of the Supreme Court of Canada seated there. as well.
Yeah, I think they're actually supposed to meet in person with the king as well at some point, maybe even prior to the start of the speech at some moment. In the initial itinerary, at least, they had laid that out. The Supreme Court justices, that is.
So again, the speech from the throne expected to get underway in about a half an hour's time. We were.
I don't know if I heard it correctly, but apparently Stephen Harper and Trudeau are sitting beside each other right now at this throne speech in the Senate. If I heard that correctly. If not, they are both in attendance, though. That's for sure. I heard that.
Be particularly significant given the line that the king has to walk here. Obviously, has to find a way.
Hold on. So they actually said briefly here that they saw them before they panned up on the right side. So I'm gonna go back here and see if they actually are sitting there. I can't see anybody based on this angle here. I don't know. I can't tell. Anyway.
Like the cautionary note is, I don't see the desire for further antagonism anywhere around us right now. So I would be shocked to see if that came via the king. So very interested to see the way in which they're able to weave that together. You're looking just inside the Senate chamber where that throne speech, as Omar mentioned, will be delivered in about half an hour's time. A number of senators have assembled. MPs will also join them after they are essentially gathered from the House of Commons and brought over. Our royal commentator Richard Berthelsen is following along with us as this all unfolds. Richard, I wanted to get your take on the crowds and the reception for the king so far, because just sitting, half a block away from it, it's been pretty cool to witness. What has been going through your head as you see the really quite warm.
Is it cool to witness? I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the chat right now. This is something, that's for sure. I just can't believe that Trudeau is there. What is he doing? I thought he was gone. He's back for more.
Uniforms. Of course, this was the first occasion we've seen where the king has been greeted officially by a full guard of honor of the Canadian Forces since he became our sovereign. And of course, the king today is wearing his sovereign's insignia of the Order of Canada around the neck. I think some people had hoped the king might wear Canadian Forces uniform, but he probably couldn't choose between the Navy, Army, and Air Force, so he tactfully opted for the suit. But the thing I was really struck by, too, in the opening is that as soon as he entered the building there, the temporary headquarters of the Senate, he was greeted by drummers, a drum circle. And what was striking to me is right under the portrait of Queen Victoria. And when you think so many treaties in this country were signed in the name of and on behalf of Queen Victoria in her very, very long reign, obviously things that we're dealing with the consequences of today, I thought the symbolism of that with the monarch, the current monarch, the one whose name the treaties were done, and the First Nations right below it was very striking. And I think it again really speaks to our history and who we are as a people and some of the issues we're dealing with. I see now the procession has formally started into the Senate.
Yes, we've got another glimpse of the king and queen, the governor general. I believe the prime minister is also, and his wife alongside them. This is sort of the procession that will move the king and queen into the chamber where the king will ultimately deliver that speech. There's still a bunch of stuff that has to happen in the interim. As far as the speech goes, as we kind of set the table for what to expect, Richard, lots of back and forth about how far essentially he would go when it comes to the threat that we face as a country from the United States and from, in particular, this president of the United States. What are your expectations for that?
I expect the speech will be a dignified and a very, subtle reminder of some of those things. I think it will obviously address the challenge.
So the main thing I find interesting here, if we go back, it says on the bottom there, the government's priorities to be outlined in today's throne speech, meaning King Charles is going to tell us what the government is going to do, and it's not coming from Mark Carney himself, unless Mark Carney takes the stage at some point as well. But the throne speech, I can only imagine, is going to be 100% King Charles. So Uh, guys, this is such a... words can't describe. I gotta be somewhat PG here. I just saw him. I just saw him. There he is. Right beside Stephen Harper. Right beside Stephen Harper. Trudeau. Justin Trudeau in attendance. Right there. Stephen Harper in attendance. Holy Christ.
Pray be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Usher of the Black Rod, you will proceed to the House of Commons and acquaint that House that it is the pleasure of His Majesty the King that they attend him immediately in the Senate chamber. Huissier du bâton noir, rendez-vous à la Chambre des communes et informez-la que c'est le plaisir de Sa Majesté le Roi que les communes se rendent immédiatement auprès de lui dans la salle du Sénat.
Okay, so I know this sounds ridiculous, but I have to be careful with music and YouTube's copyright system because they very well could I don't want to say take down the channel, but it could get hit with a copyright claim. And I don't know exactly what happens on a live stream when you get hit with a copyright claim. They could just like censor it briefly. So I'm going to talk over at least some of the musical portion here, just because I have to. This is I can't believe Trudeau. He's sitting right there. What a goofball. What an absolute goofball. This man, probably one of the worst, if not the worst, prime minister of all time. Resigned. His own caucus and cabinet were at odds with each other because his leadership was so bad. And he actually has the gall to return and show his face in the Senate. All right, well, that was quite the performance, wasn't it? My goodness. Once again, so glad that our tax dollars are going towards all of this. This is just fantastic. I love how they're dressed up in these, like, older uniforms that he's getting into a minivan.
So the king is now greeting. The king is now greeting the.
The king is now greeting Mr. and Mrs. Claus. I have no idea what is going on here.
From Manitoba, who performed for quite the crowd. The usher of the Black Rod has also just departed to go over to the House of Commons to gather members of Parliament who will then make their way back to the Senate. And when everyone has assembled, that's when the throne speech gets underway.
I just want to point out that the personalities that were in that Senate chamber. This is a live look at.
Look at them. They're just hanging out. They're all just chilling. I actually wonder. Hold on. Go to the CPAC website right now. Is there anything on? Or is it just nothing? Literally nothing. They're just sitting in there hanging out. My goodness.
King speaking to Adrian Clarkson.
This is exactly what I'm talking about when I mean our tax dollars going towards this. The MPs just hanging out in Parliament doing nothing. This overt, over-the-top performance. Like, this is insane.
His wife is next to him.
Yes.
As well as part of that line. But the grouping of people is fascinating. I mean, to see former Prime Minister Stephen Harper and Justin Trudeau together, in addition to Kim Campbell and then Neela Mulrooney, the wife of LA Brian Mulrooney, you don't typically see this type of grouping of people and personalities. But it just goes to show that this is a moment in time where flag comes before politics. Canada comes before politics. And you see many of these people sitting side by side.
Yeah, and oftentimes you might see governors general because they're apolitical in nature. And it is protocol to invite former prime ministers to the throne speech, but they don't usually attend, right? Because it's normally a highly politically charged moment. There's still politics involved in everything that's going to happen today. It is about the agenda of the government. But beyond that, it is beyond all of, beyond that, it is also about this moment that we're witnessing. The king there speaking to various members of the Senate. You mentioned some of the former prime ministers in attendance. There's a bunch of current premiers there. The premiers of New Brunswick, Manitoba, PEI, Newfoundland, and Yukon are all in attendance for this, as well as a host of lieutenant governors from each of the provinces, as well as who, of course, represent the monarchy in those provinces.
His Majesty now speaking with various members of the Supreme Court of Canada.
Are they from the Supreme Court of the North Pole? Like, what's with the suits or the getup?
Richard Wagner. And now continuing down the line.
Yeah, that's Senator Peter Harder there, who spent a long time representing the government in the Senate. The Senate's such a unique place at the moment because some people are independent, some people represent the government, some people represent the opposition. It's a bit of a mishmash. Kathleen Monk, Scott Reed, and Corey Tenike are also listening in to all of this. Scott, what strikes you so far about the group of people who have assembled, the kind of unique nature of all those former prime ministers lined up in the front row?
Yeah, this was one of the things that I always loved about these events when I was working in Ottawa, was you would get this kind of mashup of political traditions, people who'd served as prime minister in the past, and there's an outer ring as well that we're not seeing with, former staffers and journalists and other folks. So it sort of brings people together. And you can bet that today in particular, with the arrival of the king, because it is such a rare occurrence and given our circumstances, people were eager to be there. So I don't think anybody was turning down an invitation.
Yeah, very much the case. Corey, your thoughts on your old boss being among the attendees for this government's throne speech?
Well, he's a pretty strong royalist and supporter of the royal family, so I'm not surprised that he's there with enthusiasm. But I think I think Scott's right. You know, these are rare moments, but I think they're very positive moments, and I think they speak well of the country and of all the people assembled. There are institutions and things that should bring our country closer together. And while the monarchy is not everybody's cup of tea, it is a part of our history, and it's an important part. And we should pay homage to that and gather together at moments like this. It's once in 50 years.
And we will listen in right now as the usher of the Black Rod goes into the House to gather those MPs.
A message from His Majesty, the King of Canada. Un message de Sa Majesté, le Roi du Canada. The King of Canada. Un message de Sa Majesté, le Roi du Canada.
Mr. Speaker, a message from His Majesty the King. Monsieur le Président, un message de Sa Majesté.
From His Majesty the King.
Admit the messenger. Faites entrer le messager.
Admit the messenger.
Mr. Speaker, it is the pleasure of His Majesty, the King of Canada, that this honorable House attend him immediately in the chamber of the Senate. Monsieur le Président,
Mr. Speaker,
c'est le plaisir
it's a pleasure
de Sa Majesté,
of
le
His
Roi du
Majesty
Canada,
the King of
que
Canada
cette honorable chambre
that this
se rende immédiatement
distinguished
auprès
room
de lui dans
come
la
and meet
chambre
him
du Sénat.
in the Senate room.
Derrière, par la gauche, pas de danser, marche.
All right, so there's a good majority of MPs walking out right now. Liberal, Conservative, NDP, the single Green Party, Elizabeth May. That actually doesn't even look like it's all of them. I don't know. But oh my, there's Chrystia Freeland. For some reason, she's back. John Fraser, another one who shouldn't be back. Just The nightmare of our government walking out right now. All getting paid, by the way, to do whatever the hell you want to call this. Yes, King of Canada, indeed. They have no issue saying that loudly and proudly. Every time. And there you have it, Trudeau with Stephen Harper hanging out.
Are on their way. They have been collected by the usher of the Black Rod. You could see them from all different political parties making their way there out of the chamber of the House of Commons. They've got about a 2.5 block walk to make it over to the Senate chamber, which is now housed in the old train station in downtown Ottawa. King Charles, in the meantime, is making good use of his time in that chamber and greeting all the various people who have assembled. He's back there talking to, I think it's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Richard Wagner. Mila Mulrooney standing just behind him. Just moments ago, the King was greeting all the former prime ministers and you can see Justin Trudeau's mother next to him now,
Margaret.
actively engaged in conversation with former Prime Minister Stephen Harper.
To be a fly on the wall.
Yeah, I'll be a lip reader, I'll take that, yeah.
And former Prime Minister Kim Campbell as well in the background. But again, just a fascinating assembly of people of all political stripes gathered there in the Senate.
Well, based on everything we're seeing here right now, you would think we would have dual citizenship. My God. I mean, we might as well be part of the monarchy, the empire, the UK, the EU, whatever. Like, this is insanity.
To the Senate chamber, it really isn't that far at all. And if this was all contained in the...
We're slowly approaching the hour-and-a-half mark. Like, this is going on for a bit now. This is going to be really drawn out. And it has been. Ugh. It's a bit painful, to be honest with you, to see our entire parliament from top to bottom just kind of parade around for a couple days. I don't know. It's just really, really strange.
That it will last anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. The speech is normally, outside of this third time, not delivered by the monarch, but by the monarch's representative here in Canada, the Governor General. That's the normal course of action. It opens a brand new session of Parliament. In this case, it's the 45th session of Parliament, the 40th Speaker elected yesterday by members of Parliament who have come back for the first time in 5 months. The King's delivery of this speech will be the first time in 48 years that a monarch has done so. Again, anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. The goal, Omar, because I gotta tell you, most of the time throne speeches don't draw a huge audience. They will today. It will today. But the goal for the government, it serves a purpose as well. It's to outline, okay, here is our agenda. If you have a majority government, you know it's a 4-year agenda. We don't know that to be the case because they're 3 seats shy of a majority. The Liberals have formed a minority government. And so it's in more broad strokes, kind of laying the land for what their agenda will look like. And we have...
You know what? I could care less about King Charles showing up. I want to know what Stephen Harper and Trudeau are talking about right now because the smiles on their face, they're in a conversation right now. That must be pretty deep. Typical of Trudeau, though, to be waving his arms around like the wild chicken he is.
Window, right? We know that it's about 4 weeks before MPs break for the summer, essentially. Mark Carney has already signaled that he has an ambitious agenda ahead, that he wants to remove provincial trade barriers by July 1st, which of course is Canada Day. We know that the G7 summit is coming up in Kananaskis at the middle of June. We know that Donald Trump, which is a big reason the King is here today, will be at that summit, his first visit to Canada since he was elected. And so there's a lot to do in those 4 weeks, and we will be hearing a little bit about that in that throne speech coming up, again, expected to last about 20 to 25 minutes. But as we've been saying repeatedly through the morning, the King here will have to walk a line because throne speeches are the government's message. So Mark Carney's message But the fact that these words are coming out of the sovereign's mouth, of King Charles's mouth today, is significant. There's no way that the palace would not have had to sign off on every word that the king is speaking. And so, on one hand, he will have to find a way to affirm Canada's identity as an independent country in the face of Donald Trump's annexation threats.
Oh yeah, Donald Trump's annexation threats as a monarch from a different country has shown up, a leader from a different country, and it's pretty much just taken over. Holy crap, man. Holy. The mainstream media, you can't hate them enough. Like, this is absurd. Donald Trump, this, that, and the fourth. 51st state, orange man bad. Oh, the king is showing up, guys. The king is here. The king is here. Like, oh my god, dude. It's such a joke. The mainstream media, you can't hate them enough. On display constantly. Oh, man.
The first instances in which our Prime Minister, Mark Carney, met Donald Trump was at a gathering with the Queen, with King Charles's mom. And Donald Trump, as the story has been relayed to me, stood up kind of before something formal that the Queen does to end dinner, which is like a very specific cheers or toast that she gives. And Mark Carney is the one who told Donald Trump, took him aside and said, you can't do this. You can't leave in this moment. This is the way it works. And I'm told that that was kind of one of the instances in which they kind of got to know each other socially, and kind of a neat little anecdote that brings together all the various themes from today.
And there was a royal reference during Mark Carney's speech to to Washington in the Oval Office, right? Mark Carney said some things are just not for sale. Canada is not for sale, just like Buckingham Palace is not for sale, telling that when he met with Donald Trump a little while ago. But again, His Majesty the King and the Prime Minister Mark Carney there in the Senate chamber, waiting for, at this moment, the arrival of the MPs who have just been summoned in the House of Commons and are expected to make their way to the Senate chamber momentarily. And those buses have arrived, and these are the first MPs who are now emerging from their vehicles and
I
from
thought
their
they
buses.
had to walk. They're getting bussed over.
And it's really not
blocks.
that. It's a beautiful day. But obviously things are running. It's like clockwork, these events. And the throne speech was supposed to start at.
Well, thank God they don't have to walk, because it would be another 30 minutes on top of what we already have going right now. Please, let them be driven over.
Awaiting the speech from the throne, which is only the third time that this will be happening since Canada's Confederation in 1867. We know the first time was in 1957 when the Queen delivered the throne speech. It happened then 20 years later in 1977, and now in 2025 when the King delivers the throne speech.
And once the MPs actually enter the chamber, it's not going to be too much longer thereafter before the King will begin the throne speech. Once again, anywhere from 20 to 25 minutes. You're going to hear him, as the Governor General will deliver it, speak as if it were his government, right? My government will do X, Y, and Z. He is speaking in the voice of the federal government, of the Prime Minister more specifically, in laying out what they intend their agenda to be. There's the leader of the Conservative Party, the official opposition in the House, Andrew Scheer. I was going to say all parties are well represented in this endeavor today, and even through the sort of dignitaries that have gathered.
Yes, all parties are represented, as we just saw Elizabeth May in her single seat walk by.
Atlantic Canada, who are now joining on CTV main network as we watch these live images in Ottawa of MPs from all political stripes entering the Senate chamber for really what is a fascinating moment in this country's history. The speech from the throne expected to get underway momentarily.
Our Mike Locateur is actually inside where those MPs are entering right now. Mike, I'll send it over to you. Tell us a bit about what you're seeing.
Yeah, so the shot that you're seeing now, Vashi, is the MPs who were in the House of Commons at the time that the Usher of the Black Rod went and knocked on the door. So they came over, I believe, by these minibuses. Now, if you continue to sort of see here for a moment, I'll get Brian to sort of pan down the row. Earlier, you had a number of MPs, dozens of them, who had come in and lined up. And not to, make this too much of a moment of levity, but they were all being herded here by members of staff from the Senate. I think it would have been better if they had one of those yellow ropes like you see at a daycare, because trying to make sure that they all stood in line and stayed here and made sure that they were actually staying in line. A couple of them, and I don't want to call them out by name, looked like they were trying to sneak to the front to get a better view. But anyways, those are MPs who will do what they want, but we see people here like François-Philippe Champagne, Michael Barrett, Yasser Naqvi, everybody from different parties. And now we are seeing the Usher of the Black Rod come through. So I'm probably going to have to send it back to you.
All right, thanks so much, Mike. And we've got an inside look there at what is happening in the foyer of the House of Commons as members of Parliament, Mike mentioned, lined up. You can see a number of ministers among them as well as the procession makes its way back into the chamber of the Senate, where a number of senators have gathered, former prime ministers, former governors general, and that is where they're all going right now, is where the speech from the throne will be delivered.
And we saw yesterday, Vashi, what a special moment this was, not only for the people who are going to be able to, rub shoulders with their majesties, but also people who are here to absorb everything that's happening outside. People have been lining up just to get a sense of the excitement and of the jubilation of the day. You can see there the Usher of the Black Rod entering the Senate chamber. And special, too, for somebody who, is not there. I was speaking yesterday with Phil White. He is the man who came up with the thrones or designed the thrones that the king will be using for the throne speech. And he's now retired. He retired in 2021. But he said he would be watching this moment extremely closely because this is the first time a reigning monarch will be using the thrones that are being used today. Let's just take a moment to listen in.
Order! Hello!
Stop now. Get down.
May it please your majesty. The House of Commons has elected me their speaker, though I am but little able to fulfill the important duties thus assigned to me. If in the performance of those duties, I should at any time fall into error, I pray that the fault may be imputed to me and not to the House of Commons, whose servant I am, and who, through me, the better to enable them to discharge their duty to their king and country, humbly claim all their undoubted rights and privileges, especially that they may have freedom of speech in their debates, access to your majesty's person at all seasonable times, and that their proceedings may receive from your majesty the most favorable construction. Qu'il plaise à votre majesté. La Chambre des communes m'a élu président.
The House of Commons elected me president, and that I'd be able to do this I was assigned. If, in executing my duties, I make a mistake, I'm asking that the fault must be sent to me and not to the Commons, for which I'm the servant, and trying to do the best their duties to the king of their country, asks the recognition of their rights and privileges, notably freedom of speech in their debates, and also the access of the person of His Majesty in any convenient time, and asking that His Majesty interpret most favorably their deliberations.
You should probably ask the truckers about freedom of speech. I'm sure they'll give you a different answer.
Mr. Speaker, I am commanded by His Majesty the King to declare to you that he freely confides in the duty and attachment of the House of Commons to His Majesty's person and government, and not doubting that their proceedings will be conducted with wisdom, temper, and prudence, he grants and upon all occasions will recognize and allow their constitutional privileges. I am commanded also to assure you that the Commons shall have ready access to His Majesty upon all seasonable occasions, and that their proceedings, as well as your words and actions, will constantly receive from him the most favorable construction. Monsieur le Président, Sa Majesté, le roi me charge de vous dire qu'ayant pleine confiance
makes
dans
me
le
say to say he's got a full confidence in the loyalty and the attachment of the House of Commons with the government of His Majesty, doubting that the deliberations with wisdom, moderation, and prudence, and will be able to recognize those constitutional privileges. I am looking forward to make sure that the Commons will have all convenient access, free access to His Majesty, and that their deliberations and your acts and your words will always be interpreted on the most favorable way.
It really feels like we're in the UK right now. You could remove those two Canadian flags. You don't even have to put the UK flag there. It just this is weird, man. Sitting here complaining about our sovereignty and getting attacked from the United States or whatever, but this is what we're doing right now.
Senators, members of the House of Commons, it is with a deep sense of pride and pleasure that my wife and I join you here today as we witness Canadians coming together in a renewed sense of national pride, unity, and hope. I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered on the unceded territory of the Algonquin and Anishinaabe people. This land acknowledgement is a recognition of shared history as a nation, while continuing to deepen my own understanding. It is my great hope that in each of your communities and collectively as a country, a path is found toward truth and reconciliation in both word and deed. This is my 20th visit to Canada, spread over the course of more than half a century, and my first as sovereign. As I've said before, every time I come to Canada, a little more of Canada seeps into my bloodstream, and from there, straight to my heart. I've always had the greatest admiration for Canada's unique identity, which is recognized across the world for bravery and sacrifice in defense of national values, and for the diversity and kindness of Canadians. To the First Nations, Inuit and Métis peoples, you have welcomed my family and myself to your traditional lands with great warmth and hospitality, for which I am humbly grateful. This year, we mark the 80th anniversary of VE Day and VJ Day. On Juno Beach, at Dieppe, on the Somme, at Beaumont-Hamel, at Ypres, and on Vimy Ridge. At those places and many others, forever etched into our memories, Canadians fought and died alongside our closest allies. Aujourd'hui, je vois des élus venant
I
d'un
see
bout à l'autre
elected
du
members
Canada,
from one part of
de
Canada to the other,
Saint-Jean's
from St.
à
John's
Terre-Neuve et
to
Labrador,
Newfoundland and Labrador, to Victoria,
en Colombie-Britannique
in British Columbia,
et d'Arviat
in Dariat,
au Nunavut.
in Nunavut.
Je vois des
I
gardiens
see
des droits
some keepers of the rights and guaranteed freedom by the Canadian Charter.
En tant que roi,
As king,
je tiens à
I
vous remercier
want to
de
thank
vous
you
mettre au service
that you be
de
at the
vos
service
compatriotes
of your
d'un bout
compatriots
ou l'autre
from
de ce
one
grand et beau
end
pays.
to the other of this beautiful country.
You speak for your communities, representing an incredible richness of cultures, languages, and perspectives. We owe it to this generation and those who succeed us to think and act for the greater good of all. While the world faces unprecedented challenges, generating uncertainties across the continents with regards to peace and stability, economics and climate change, your communities have the skills and determination to bring a wealth of solutions. En encourageant la collaboration et en tenant des débats
Encouraging the
respectueux
cooperation and
et
debates
constructifs,
that are constructive
vous
and
permettrez à
respectful,
ce gouvernement
you will
d'agir de
permit this
façon
government to act
audacieuse et juste
with audacity
bien
and
des
fairness
Canadiens
for the
et
good
des
of
Canadiennes.
Canadians.
It has been nearly 70 years since the sovereign first opened Parliament. In the time since, Canada has dramatically changed, repatriating its constitution, achieving full independence, and witnessing immense growth. Canada has embraced its British, French, and Indigenous roots and become a bold, ambitious, innovative country that is bilingual, truly multicultural, and committed to reconciliation. The Crown has for so long been a symbol of unity for Canada. It also represents stability and continuity from the past to the present. As it should, it stands proudly as a symbol of Canada today in all her richness and dynamism. When my dear late mother, Queen Elizabeth II, opened a new Canadian Parliament in 1957, the Second World War remained a fresh, painful memory. The Cold War was intensifying. Freedom and democracy were under threat. Canada was emerging as a growing economic power and a force for peace in the world. In the decades since, history has been punctuated by epoch-making events: the Vietnam War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the start of the War on Terror. Today, Canada faces another critical moment. Democracy, pluralism, the rule of law, self-determination, and freedom are values which Canadians hold dear, and ones which the government is determined to protect. The system of open global trade that, while not perfect, has helped to deliver prosperity for Canadians for decades, is changing. Canada's relationships with partners are also changing. Il nous faut confronter la réalité.
We must face reality.
Depuis la Deuxième Guerre
Since the
mondiale,
Second World
notre
War,
monde n'a
our
jamais été
world
aussi
has never
dangereux
been
et
as
instable.
dangerous and unstable
Le
as
Canada
now. Canada
fait face
is
à des défis
facing
qui,
some
dans nos
challenges
vies,
that
sont sans précédent.
are without precedent.
Many Canadians are feeling anxious and worried about the drastically changing world around them. Fundamental change is always unsettling. Yet this moment is also an incredible opportunity for renewal, an opportunity to think big and to act bigger, an opportunity for Canada to embark on the largest transformation of its economy since the Second World War.
I don't like where he's going with this.
A confident Canada which has welcomed new Canadians, including from some of the most tragic global conflict zones, can seize this opportunity by recognizing that all Canadians can give themselves far more than any foreign power on any continent can ever take away. And that by staying true to Canadian values, Canada can build new alliances and a new economy that serves all Canadians. The Prime Minister and the President of the United States, for example, have begun defining a new economic and security relationship between Canada and the United States, rooted in mutual respect and founded on common interests, to deliver transformational benefits for both sovereign nations.
Simultaneously, the government is reinforcing its relationships with the commercial partners and trustful allies. Make sure that Canada has what this world needs and defending the values that people respect. Canada is ready to start a coalition of nations that will share these values, that believes in cooperation, international cooperation, and free trade of goods and of services and ideas. In this new world that evolves at a frenetic rhythm, Canada will show the road to follow. The demonstration will be made when Canada will preside the summit of the G7.
The government is guided by its conviction that the economy is only truly strong when it serves everyone. Many Canadians are struggling to get ahead. The government is responding, reducing middle-class taxes and saving two-income families up to $840 a year. It will cut the GST on homes at or under $1 million for first-time home buyers, delivering savings of up to $50,000. And it will lower the GST on homes between $1 million and $1.5 million. Le gouvernement assurera la pérennité
will make sure that we have programs that already know that permits to families to save thousands of dollars a year. Notably, what goes for the medication, insurance, and also the dental services of Canada that will be accessible to 8 million Canadians, permitting to save more than $800 per year in average.
The government's overarching goal, its core mission, is to build the strongest economy in the G7. That starts with creating one Canadian economy out of 13. Internal barriers to trade and labor mobility cost Canada as much as $200 billion each year. The government will introduce legislation to remove all remaining federal barriers to internal trade and labor mobility by Canada Day. Les premiers ministres de plusieurs provinces
of many provinces and territories already took some measures to break the obstacles to interior commerce. The government will go on these progress to create, before Canada Day, a real system of free trade across the country. It's efforts that are essential to permit for Canada to realize all its potential on an economic level. But that's not sufficient.
To build Canada strong, the government is working closely with provinces, territories, and Indigenous peoples to identify and catalyze projects of national significance. Projects that will connect Canada, that will deepen Canada's ties with the world, and that will create high-paying jobs for generations. Given the pace of change and the scale of opportunities, speed is of the essence. Through the creation of a new major federal project office, the time needed to approve a project will be reduced from 5 years to 2, all while upholding Canada's world-leading environmental standards and its constitutional obligations to Indigenous peoples. The government will also strike cooperation agreements with every interested province and territory within 6 months to realize its goal of one project, one review. When Canadians come together, Canada builds things that last.
To eliminate these obstacles that are slowing down the economy of Canada will bring a new era of growth, because with Canada will go over the commercial wars, but get stronger than ever. That will permit to become a superpower as far as the green energy, and to build a strategy, industrial strategy that will permit that Canada be more competitive on the international level while fighting the climate change. To build systems of good careers with specialized crafts, and to make Canada a turntable for science and innovation.
Critically, the government will undertake a series of measures to help double the rate of home building while creating an entirely new housing industry, using Canadian technology, Canadian skilled workers, and Canadian lumber. The government will introduce measures to deliver affordable homes by creating Build Canada Homes. This mission-driven organization will act to accelerate the development of new affordable housing. It will invest in the growth of the prefabricated and modular housing industry.
Oh, great.
It's significant financing to affordable home builders. The government will make the housing market work better.
Here we go, a bunch of prefab shoe boxes. I literally called this weeks ago.
The government will drive supply up to bring housing costs down. To be truly strong, Canada must be secure. To that end, the government will introduce legislation to enhance security at Canada's borders. Law enforcement and intelligence agencies will have new tools to stop the flow of fentanyl and its precursors. The Canada Border Services Agency will be given new powers to examine goods destined for export, to prevent the transport of illegal and stolen products, including cars. The government will protect the sovereignty
of Canada
en rebâtissant,
on
réarmant et réinvestissant dans les forces armées
in
canadiennes.
the Canadian Armed Forces.
Il stimulera l'industrie militaire
The
canadienne
military industry
en
of
prenant
Canada
part au
by
plan
taking part
Réarme
of
Europe
the
et
plan
contribuera
with
ainsi
Europe, and continuing
avec des partenaires
with some partners
européens
that are
à
from
la
Europe
sécurité
to
transatlantique.
the transatlantic security,
Et il investira
and will
pour renforcer
invest
sa
to
présence
reinforce its
dans le
presence
nord,
in the north,
alors que cette région,
this region
qui est partie
that's a
intégrante
part
de la
of
nation
the
canadienne,
Canadian nation
fait face
is
à de
facing
nouvelles menaces.
new threats.
The government will discharge its duty to protect Canadians and their sovereign rights from wherever challenges may come at home or abroad. To keep communities safe, the government will hire 1,000 more RCMP personnel. It will change firearms licensing and strengthen enforcement of yellow and red flag laws. Weapons licenses for those convicted of intimate partner violence and those subject to protection orders will be revoked. Through the deployment of scanners, drones, and helicopters, additional personnel, and canine teams, the government will stem the tide of illegal guns and drugs across the border. It will take these steps while protecting the rights of law-abiding gun owners and Indigenous peoples' long-standing hunting traditions. The government will bring a renewed focus on car theft and home invasions by toughening the criminal code to make bail harder to get for repeat offenders charged with committing these crimes, along with human trafficking and drug smuggling. During this time of great change, Canadians are uniting behind what makes Canada unique. La langue française,
the French language, and the Quebec culture are the heart of the Canadian identity. They define the country that Canadians and me love so much.
Canada
is a country where we respect and celebrate the official languages and the indigenous languages.
The
government wants to protect the institutions that make these cultures are shining and these identity in the entire world, like CBC Radio-Canada, protect what gives us access, some fresh food and quality food, some agricultural producers, and protect the management of the offer.
Nature is core to Canada's identity. In 2022, Canada convened COP15 in Montreal, which concluded with 196 countries striking a historic agreement to protect 30% of their lands and 30% of waters by 2030. To this end, the government will protect more of Canada's nature than ever before through the creation of new national parks, national urban parks, marine protected areas, and other conservation initiatives. The government will always protect the rights and freedoms that the Charter guarantees for every Canadian. The government will be a reliable partner to Indigenous peoples, upholding its fundamental commitment to advancing reconciliation. Central to this commitment is the creation of long-term wealth and prosperity with Indigenous peoples. For that reason, the government will double the Indigenous Loan Guarantee Program from $5 billion to $10 billion, enabling more Indigenous communities to become owners of major projects. As Canada moves forward with nation-building projects, the government will always be firmly guided by the principle of free, prior, and informed consent. Canada's immigration system has long been a source of pride for Canadians and of dynamism for the economy. The government is dedicated to rebuilding the trust of Canadians in immigration by restoring balance to the system. Le gouvernement instaurera une limite sur le nombre de travailleurs étrangers temporaires et
temporary
d'étudiants
workers
internationaux,
and international students,
establissant un
establishing
plafond
a
qui, à
ceiling
partir de
that will,
2027,
starting in
sera en
2027,
deçà de 5%
will be
de la
below
population
5%
canadienne.
of the Canadian population.
Simultaneously, il attirera
He
les
will
meilleurs talents
bring the
dans
best
le
talents
monde pour
in the
bâtir
world
l'économie.
to build the economy,
Et il fera
and
savoir aux
will
Canadiens
make it known
et
to
aux
Canadians
Canadiennes qui travaillent
that are
à
working
l'étranger que s'ils
in
songent à
foreign
revenir
countries,
au pays,
if they want to come
il
back
n'y a
to the
pas de
country,
moment
there's
plus
no
propice
moment
pour le faire.
better to do.
Dans toutes ces actions,
In all these
le
actions,
gouvernement
the government
sera guidé par
will be
une nouvelle
guided
discipline
by a
fiscale.
new fiscal
Dépenser
discipline.
moins
Spend
pour
less
que les Canadiens
so that Canadians
puissent investir
can
plus.
invest more.
Day-to-day government spending, the government's operating budget, has been growing by 9% every year. The government will introduce measures to bring it below 2%. Transfers to provinces, territories, or individuals will be maintained. The government will balance its operating budget over the next 3 years by cutting waste, capping the public service, ending duplication, and deploying technology to improve public sector productivity. In parallel, the government will take a series of measures to catalyze new investment, to create better jobs and higher incomes for Canadians. The scale of the government's initiative will match the challenges of our times and the ambitions of Canadians. Honourable Senators, members of the House of Commons, when my dear late mother addressed your predecessors 7 decades ago, she said that in that age and against the backdrop of international affairs, no nation could live unto itself. It is a source of great pride that in the following decades, Canada has continued to set an example to the world in her conduct and values as a force for good.
Of how not to run a country as our economy dies.
À vous.
To you.
Et à l'ensemble du peuple canadien.
And to the
Mon épouse et
Canadian
moi-même
people, my wife and
adressons
myself,
nos
are
sincères
addressing
remerciements
our
pour
sincere
cet
thanks
accueil
for
des plus chaleureux.
that more welcome,
As
more
the anthem reminds
warm
us,
welcome.
the true North is indeed strong and free. Members of the House of Commons, you will be asked to appropriate the funds to carry out the services and expenditures authorized by Parliament. May you honor the profound trust bestowed upon you by Canadians. And may God bless and guide you in all your duties.
All right, there you have it. The entire speech done. That was quite the novel there from a guy who claims we have independence and we are strong and free, but just laid out our entire government's plan, essentially. That's kind of funny, isn't it? The ruler of a different country, leader of a different country, coming here and laying out our government's policies and plan. Alrighty. Fantastic stuff. Yeah, woohoo. Let's go, Sovereign Canada.
It essentially was in two parts. The first part about Canada and its place in the world, given the political context of the tensions between Canada and the U.S. And the second part, essentially, a synthesis or a summation of Liberal campaign commitments. And
it honestly felt like we were seconds away from him saying, and Canada, with its brand new economy, has officially joined the EU, or something around those lines. It felt like he was a couple sentences away, a couple seconds away from dropping, hey guys, you're a part of the UK and the EU now. Congratulations.
His unique identity, the fact that there was a system of open global trade that, while not perfect, has helped Canada to deliver prosperity. We must be clear-eyed. The world is more dangerous and more uncertain, and that Canada is ready to build a coalition of like-minded countries, allies with like-minded countries. So
yeah, see, there's still going on about this coalition of like-minded countries, which that's not something I like to hear. That's not a good thing.
Acknowledging the tensions between the U.S., but not sort of overtly being critical of the U.S. president.
Yeah, I thought the moment of this.
I'm thinking of one place right now that has a coalition of countries and is an absolute nightmare.
The king said the true north is indeed strong and free, and there was sustained applause from the people who had gathered. All the other things that we heard from him, even about the relationship with the United States, for example, were very much what we're used to hearing from this kind of newly minted government, but more specifically from the Prime Minister. For all the domestic policy he talked about, even Canada's kind of newfound position in the world. A lot of that is, of course, because he's delivering the government speech from the throne, very much what we're used to hearing. But it was those little moments, like you mentioned at the top, referencing the significance of Canada's unique national identity, and then the conclusion where he said, the true north is indeed strong and free. I think those are the moments that punctuated this speech that made it significant in the way Canadians had been hoping it would be, which is against the backdrop of what the United States.
How are we unique when our entire system is based on another country's system? How are we unique when French is a language spoken in another country? There's nothing unique about this. There's nothing unique about stealing other cultures and bringing them to one place and then, calling it Canada? It's just ridiculous at this point. A bunch of smoke and mirrors and charades.
You've got the monarch delivering the speech, and it was fascinating to hear how personal he got. And there's not a single word in this speech that was uttered through the king's mouth that would not have had to be approved by the palace. And so the fact that he, acknowledged the tensions to the extent that he did, was significant. And it was significant that it was the king uttering this message. Of course, talking about the long history of the links between the British monarchy and Canada, and also bringing up his mother.
Oh, the long links between the two, but we're very unique, by the way. We're a very unique country. Right? Yeah.
So really emphasizing on those links and acknowledging that Canada is facing unprecedented challenges. Again, we have to say this is the government's messaging, the government system, but the fact that he is saying those words is absolutely significant.
And seeing them before the room of people that you see assembled there, right? You've got the current Governor General, former Governors General, the current Prime Minister.
All right, we're about to watch the United Kingdom's Joe Biden walk out right now. All right, guys, that's probably gonna do it for this stream today. They'll probably draw this out for another hour and a half because they have nothing else to do today, apparently. They love to mention how we're living in uncertain times, but here we are parading around. I want to thank you all for watching. Hit that like button, hit that sub button if you are new. Thank you very, very much for joining me today and watching this absolute shite show that is our parliament. I will be live tomorrow for hopefully a normal day in Parliament, which should include question period and many other things. possibly proceedings, that in the 4th. Have a great rest of your day or night, depending on where you are from. Take it easy.
All of the MPs that are gathered here, a number of people will recognize Evan Solomon there, newly minted minister, also